Alrighty, so this is a game in the Object 907, the Tier 10 Russian premium medium tank. It was given out as a reward for a couple of campaigns and whatnot. Plays pretty much like all the other Russian mediums, just like the 140 or the T62A sort of tanks. And this is on Malinovka, and we're going to talk about a few things here on Malinovka, but mostly this is how to play the map given a particular layout. And I always sort of stress this idea that the south spawn has an advantage to get this hill area, a slight one, because they can get to the windmill slightly faster, the windmill slightly more on their side. And so I always feel like it's important for your faster tanks to go and establish a position there and then allow yourself to be reinforced by your slower heavy tanks, and then at which point you can just fall back. And we'll talk about how we would fight off of this hill area and how we would sort of progress through this side of the map. And I think it's something important because I still see a lot of people play this field side in Malinovka. I've never really thought that's a very solid way to play through the map, mostly because the caps are so easily defendable from a pretty long distance. Especially now they added a ditch back here along the zero line, which makes it a lot easier for people to get shots on cap from relative safety. And all you would really have to do is light it. So I'm going to head up to the hill, and then you know one of the things that we always preach in the stream is early intel, right? And so see how our T49 has moved forward here, and that's really important to me as a guy that's going up the hill, because I know what I'm going to be up against coming up here. I know that their 140 is coming up here. I know that the M48 is trailing behind them, but I also know that the M48 is slightly slower, right? So I know that I'm going to get to my position before these guys, right? And that's sort of the importance of having that early intel set. I already know what I'm going to be up against, and just like I know that the E4 is going to be on this side, so I don't have to worry about an E4 creeping up on me anytime soon. And so when you look at a dispersion like our teams, it's not that bad. We did leave a couple of guys in the base, but they are lower tier, and that's fine. There'll be a little bit of a speed bump there. We've got a few guys over here, which isn't super helpful, especially this LTTV back here isn't very helpful. But this T49 is doing a good job, and we're getting a couple of mediums coming up to the hill as well as this heavy. The rest of our guys are still pretty far in the back, but we'll see what happens. And as is so often, though, you always want to look and see what your team is doing as you're going, making your final approach here. So as I go up this hill, I already have a good idea of what I'm going to be up against, and I want to know how much my team is coming to back me up. And then when you play this area here, again, because I know that we have a bit of a speed advantage, their 140 either got a bad spawn or he didn't drive straight here. Their Bulldog is down here, right, and who knows where their RU-251 is, but he wouldn't be much of a challenge. Because I know that I have a speed advantage, I know that I can sit on this windmill here. And when I do that, what I want to do is I actually want to move forward a little bit, because what you want to do from either spawn is lock them into these areas right here, this sort of A7, A8 area here. This is no man's land, right? This is a big open area where if you're lit, Artie gets all sorts of shots on you, and depending on where you're at and where your opponent is at, they'll be able to get shots on you. And same thing from this north spawn. What you want to do is you want to lock them in this B0 C0 area, because that's the exact same thing except on the other side. This lower plateau isn't normally as important as the upper plateau, but I always try to contain this first, and you'll see why, because once we sort of get our foothold here, it's really difficult. They have to really want it if they're going to take it from us. And so see, this 140 came up here a little bit tentatively. That's all I was trying to do, is track him there, but he ended up getting tracked by the other guy, which is fantastic. And as long as, see how the pattern isn't pushing beyond them, as long as they're not pushing up, you always want to punish the guy that's in the front, right? Because you want his buddies behind him to be a little bit afraid. And the same thing, this is T57. I want to track this T57 out here. It's really important to keep these guys from feeling like they can move forward easily. And that's what's really going to make it easier for your team. We had a T10 that just YOLO'd in there, which actually hurts us more than it helps us. But what are you going to do? And again, they're exactly where we want them. They're sitting in a kill box here, and that's exactly what we want. All you got to do is keep them lit, let your arty do some work. And then again, if these guys were not lit here, then I would maneuver around. I would maneuver around into this area a little bit to make sure that I kept them lit but was still relatively safe. But as long as they're lit and they're sitting back there, right? They're not pushing forward, they're not pushing back, they're just sitting out there and lit. As long as they're willing to sit in a kill box like that, just let them hang themselves. We don't have super good shots because this Conqueror is a little bit hull down, but we really have nothing better to do, so we were just trying to snipe the cupola. And again, if you're these medium tanks that are up here, this 140 drove too far forward, right? You don't need to shoot these guys. These guys are not going anywhere. They're literally sitting out in the open for you. Let your team do some work. All right, this is all this is just setting up your team so that your team can do some stuff. And once again, as long as they're lit, okay, and then now we've got pretty good control of this hill, right? And we've taken out 2 of their tier 10s already up here, and we've got the patent down relatively low. So we've dealt a lot of damage to their top tiers, and that's important. And you'll notice that again, they never made it out of the kill box, and that's a huge problem for them, right? If you just cannot sit in that area where they sat in, because you will get wrecked. And it's the same thing again from this. If you come from the other spawn, you don't want to get caught back in this area. You'll see a lot of people on this 0 line here, and you really want to avoid that because that ends up being a kill box. And so the thing is that once you control this hill area, right, you don't want to push down this hill because it's the same thing. As you come through here, you're just going to get murdered as you come through this A7, A8 area. So really what you want to be able to do, they're going to have a lot of guys camping down here in this area. So really what you want to do is you want to have like one of your light tanks move forward, either underneath or over top to get into this area right here. And you can, it's very easy to spot these guys like where this Indian was right here, or along this hill right here, or anywhere in this depression right here. And then it's really easy for these guys on the hill to just sit up here and shoot down there into those guys. And so that's really what you want to do. Once you clear this hill, you then come down, you have somebody over here to light down there. And since we don't really have any light tanks, I'll go ahead and play that role myself. It's something that you can do fairly easy on the medium tank. And they changed the way that a lot of these hills sort of operate, so it's actually a little bit safer to come over the top here and go in than to drive through the lake, because you'll always drive slower through that water, and you'll get lit by essentially the same people. And so we know that there's that bulldog or somebody's going to be over in this area because they've been wrecking our guys along that lane. Not surprisingly, our guys in the base really haven't done a whole lot, but that's fine. So the bulldog is still there. He's moved up a little bit, but it's not a super concern for me, especially now that we know where the RU-251 is. We know that they've got a bunch of their tanks here. And then again, all you want to do, right? It's very easy for me to keep all these guys lit down here. All these guys need to do is just kind of hang out up here, let me light, and then just shoot. Collect that free damage. Because there's nowhere really that these guys can hide that you can't shoot them from up there, unless they go really far back. Unfortunately, our team is going to try to push off of here, which will not work out well for them. And again, this is the same principle. As long as we have guys lit here, I don't need to keep poking up, right? As long as these guys are lit, you know, just allow your team that's on the hill to get their shots down here. And if they're not lit, then you poke up, get your lights, and then fall back. Someone will shoot someone sometime. And so we've whittled down most of their tier 10s. Their E4 is just now pushing across the lakeside, but that doesn't really matter too much. Unfortunately, we are trying to play off of this hill, which is bad, because now what that means is that there's nobody shooting these guys here. And so despite the fact that we're keeping these guys lit all day, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Because we don't have anybody up here to actually shoot them. Which is very sad. So we know their 4502A is going up the hill. It's not that big of a concern. We have a Type 4 up there. They're sending their WZ-120 across to help their E4. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on because it looks like we're going to lose that. And our Type 4 does shoot that Panther 88. Which is good. That's what we needed. We see that they pushed their Leo PTA up here as well. So they have a VK and a PTA up there. And the Indian is presumably following. So I make a little bit of a tactical mistake here, in my opinion. What I really should have done is I should have circled back and either helped out the Type 4 or the T-30 here. But they had a T-44 that's in the base. And with this E75, and what I really wanted to be able to do was to clear out artillery, but I still probably should have gone back. And the reason why I should have gone back was, one, to help out my team potentially. Two, is that these guys that were in this position were always going to be in this position. It didn't matter whether I attacked into them or not; they were still going to be here. So if I went back and helped, these guys would still be here later, right? And so that's always something that you want to take into account when you push into an area. But I was hoping to get the artillery down, but I'm not going to be able to just push across here after the artillery. I want to sit low in this ditch, and one of the reasons why is that I'm fairly certain that the artillery is going to be over in this area over here. So I want to make it a little bit more difficult shot for him to hit me, but I also need this E75 is charging it, so I can't just drive out here with these guys in tow. And so their E75 tries to ram me. Not super great. But the T-44 makes a little bit of a mistake. He should have just sat in the back and kept trying to snipe. But he moved forward. And then again, one of the features of the Russian tanks, medium tanks, is that it does have a good, a reasonably good turret. And so if you can side scrape against some tanks, it's usually pretty fruitful because it's not super easy for them to hit, and you can move back and forth to make yourself a little bit more elusive. And again, one of the things is that I know that the artillery is over on this side someplace, so I want to be on this side of the E75. I don't actually want to be on the other side of the E75. So you'll notice that I actually had an opportunity to circle around him, and I chose to stay on this side. And again, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot in the stream, but it's understand what you're afraid of. I'm not super afraid of this E75 owning me. See how he's trying to target my my cupola? And he does hit it. And all I got to do is just sort of shift back and forth and make it easy, or I don't make it easy to shoot. And I know that the Object 261 just shot because I just saw the shell come from over here. And so again, whenever that happens, whenever there's one artillery left and he fires, I always look at the time. And so that was at like 6:40, and so I know I have until like 6:10ish. Before he's loaded again. So I've got plenty of time to drive over to where he's at. And so I always try to sort of keep a mental note of that whenever an artillery fires. I know which artillery it is, and I know how long he has to reload. I always try to give myself a little bit of leeway. That's why I only give a 30-second reload, when in actuality it's like 45-ish, whatever. Alright, so, and then what ends up is that there's this sort of two distinct sets. We know the WZ-120 was in the field, so he might be coming back, and that the PTA is up dueling with our Type 4. And the WZ-120 is here, and he does have a health advantage on us, and that's something that we do need to worry about. But again, this goes more into the sort of tactics realm. Remember that the WZ-120 does not have very good gun depression or gun control. And so when in those types of situations, ideally what you want to be able to do is keep him on higher ground where he cannot actually be underneath you, because if he's at a lower elevation, it's much easier for him, because at the elevation that he's at right now, even though he's facing slightly downhill, you'll notice that as he gets closer to me, he's not actually going to be able to shoot into my hull. So see how, like, he's at, let's see, I don't know if I can get a good angle on this. He's at basically maximum gun depression right now, but see how it's basically turret ring slash frontal hull. And so you want to keep this guy sort of at that position where he's on higher ground than you, even though I also don't have a very good shot at him right now, you'll notice, but I want him to bounce, right? And then I probably shouldn't have fired there, but I basically want him to bounce. And then as I get to lower ground, see how my gun is starting to go into his hull, but his gun is still going into my turret, right? And that's the sort of situation that you want. And then see, now I can shoot into him, and he's still going to have a hard time until he gets to a level where he can reduce his gun. And see, the mistake that he's made is that he's backed up, and see now how he's on higher ground. Now he can't even shoot me. Like, his shell is going to go above me just because he's far too high. And that's sort of the disadvantage of those Chinese mediums, and why you want to be careful about the level of ground that you're on. Okay, and then so we take that guy out, but the PTA is still in play. And then so now it's really just the PTA. Our T-30 is coming across here, though. So what I want to do is I want to face this guy at the same time as the T-30. I don't know exactly how much health that the PTA has, but I want to see where he's at. I don't know how far back he's gotten. And so you'll notice that our T-30 is right here. So our T-30 is in play. And then see how this PTA is coming through here now? I don't actually notice him immediately. See how this PTA is coming through here? And so what that means is that this hill that's right here is going to block the T-30 shot for a little bit. And so what I need this PTA to do is to come to this higher ground here, or I myself should be on this other side of this hill. And so what I should do is turn off to the right here and circle back towards my T-30, which will give him a shot. And again, it's because it's the same scenario when we ran into the WZ-120. This guy's got more health than us. We can probably out the APM him, but I don't notice him right away. And so he gets a free shot. That's a nice roll, but it doesn't really matter too much because he's probably gonna two shots. Sorry. But see how he's like high on this hill now? So he's got no more protection from this T-30 as long as he remains on this side. And so he is able to kill us, but the T-30 does his job. And so even though we made a couple of mistakes here, one of the things that we're going to talk about is that look at their team's dead bodies, right? Their team's dead bodies. They had a couple guys that died up on the hill late, right? They had a few guys that died right here. Almost everyone else died in their base, right? They only had that one E4 die out over here, and they had their one light tank die over here. Everything else, died in the A to C lines. And again, as in most games, you don't want to play that far back. I don't feel like our team played this very well, but their team played it just a little bit worse in this case. And again, one of the things that we want to talk about is that when you take this hill area here, don't get caught. If you're the opposite team, don't get caught over here, or if you're on this team, don't get caught over here. You either go to the hill, you don't go up that far at all, because otherwise the exact same thing happened to these two tier 10 and tier 9 tanks that were out here, right? They got wrecked. They did very little damage in return, and you want to avoid doing that. So if you're not going to take the hill, you have to sit back and look for other avenues. And then second, once you have the hill, don't push down the hill. All you want to do is just come over here, clear out this area first. And then once you clear out this area, all you need is one guy, just one single guy down here to spot these guys. Everyone else can stay on the hill. You just punish these guys right here. And then once these guys are punished and cleared, then you can potentially push down the hill or have this guy push across here, one of the two. You have a multitude of options, but you don't want to just push down that hill because you're basically running into a firing line there. And then after that, it's really just mop up. Again, I probably should have gone back to help out my teammate instead of push forward to look for artillery, but small mistakes. Anyhow, so if we look at the stats for this, we got sort of a mixed contribution from our team. So some of them did pretty well, but some of them did rather poorly, especially some of those guys that pushed up the hill and then decided to try to drive down the hill. It's always good to go up to the hill, get your damage in there while you can. But again, that's not a place that you necessarily want to hang out when you're pushing that A line. Allow your team to clear out the rest of the map, and then you can, because you can get a lot of shots. And that's the strategic importance of the hill, is that you can get those shots on the rest of the map, unlike on some other maps. Anyhow, so not that great at shooting, not a lot of penetrations. A lot of them were shots on the hill that we were just basically shooting into turrets. A lot of times if I'm not going to need my reload, I'll just fire because two reasons. One, you might get a lucky pen, and two, because especially when you have guys frozen, to the deer and headlights, if you keep sort of pelting them with shots, even if they're not penning per se, it really makes them think that they can't move forward, and they'll stay frozen a lot of times, and that just makes it easier for the rest of your team. So unless you're in an ammo limited tank, then you might as well just take the free shots. Otherwise, not a whole lot. We didn't actually get we got close to 5,000 assist damage there, but most of that was on the top of the hill, I would think. One of the things that I wanted to stress is that once we moved into that secondary position, close to the lake, we didn't get a whole lot of spotting damage there, and we probably should have gotten more. Again, all you got to do is sit up on that hill, let your guy light for you, and then just rail on those guys, like where that Panther 2, T-44, etc. were at, and just rail on them from the top of the hill. And then you can sort of move forward as you want. Anyhow, so I hope that was helpful for playing different areas on Malinovka, and sort of a what to do, what not to do in terms of taking that the hill with the windmill. So yeah, thanks for watching.